Good morning.
Good morning.
All right. Time is now 10:01 a.m. and I will call the meeting of the District of Columbia Board of Ethics and Government Accountability to order. I'm Bega Chairperson Norma Hutcheson. This meeting is being held at the Board of Ethics and Government Accountability at 1030 15th Street Northwest, Suite 700 West, and virtually. Joining me today for this meeting are board members Charles Nottingham, Felice Smith, Darrin Sobin, and Melissa Tucker. Together, the five of us constitute a quorum for this meeting. Since it was first posted, there have been no changes to the agenda. I ask that you please take a moment to review the agenda, and then we need a motion to adopt the agenda.
A motion to adopt the agenda.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we adopt the agenda for today's meeting. Any comments or suggestions? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify your approval by saying aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Hearing none, the agenda is adopted. Next on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from the March 2025 meeting. Will a member make a motion that we consider the approval of these meeting minutes?
I'll offer the motion to approve the minutes.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we approve the March 2025 meeting minutes. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Hearing none, the board approves the minutes from the March 2025 meeting. Next on the agenda is a report from the Office of Open Government. We'll hear from Director Allen. Please proceed.
Thank you. Good morning, Chairperson Hutcheson and members of the board. I am Niquelle Allen, Director of Open Government, and I am pleased to present this report on the activities of the Office of Open Government. I am joined at the table today by Attorney Joan Lelma. She is standing in for Chief Counsel Louis Neal. OOG's mission is to ensure that all persons receive full and complete information concerning the affairs of the District of Columbia government and the actions of its officials. Since the last board meeting, OOG has continued its work to ensure that the District of Columbia government's operations are transparent, open to the public, and promote civic engagement. To that end, OOG has enforced the Open Meetings Act, advised on the Freedom of Information Act requirements, and provided training on those transparency laws. OOG has proudly served as advocates for an open and transparent government. I will begin my report with Open Meetings Act and Freedom of Information Act advice. With respect to advisory opinions, I have not issued an advisory opinion since the last board meeting. With respect to informal advice, since the last board meeting, OOG has responded informally via email, telephone, or teleconference to requests for assistance as follows: 14 requests for Open Meetings Act advice, 6 requests for Freedom of Information Act advice, and 10 requests for technical assistance with open-dc.gov. Next is meeting monitoring. OOG staff attends public bodies meetings in person and remotely to ensure compliance with the Open Meetings Act. They also inspect public bodies' websites and OOG's central meeting calendar for public meeting notices and records. OOG's attorneys provide legal advice on the Open Meetings Act compliance and take corrective action if necessary. Since the last board meeting, OOG's legal staff attended 26 public body meetings. As a result of the monitoring, 4 corrective measures were communicated. The public bodies failed to post a proper agenda pursuant to the regulations. The agenda was not detailed or it was absent. And 2, post notice of meeting cancellation. Next is training and outreach. OOG's meeting with representatives of the DC Public Charter School Board. On March 13th, Attorney Joan Lelma attended a virtual meeting with Sarah Cheatham of the DC Public Charter School Board, she's their attorney, where they discussed how replacing the school transparency policy with public information policy will impact DC Public Charter Schools and the implication for the Board of Trustees for DC Public Charter Schools, specifically concerning their obligations under the OMA. Attorneys Lelma and Cheatham also discussed how OOG's new training series for the Board of Trustees schedule shall be published. OMA training for local school advisory teams. On March 14th, Attorney Lelma presented Introduction to the Open Meetings Act for local school advisory teams. The training provided a brief account of OOG's functions and an overview of our application of the Open Meetings Act to public bodies, in particular local school advisory teams, which included meeting procedures and before and after meeting requirements under the OMA. This training was the first in OOG's new educational training series for LSATs, the schedule for which has been published. OOG staff attended the training virtually. American Society for Access Professionals Sunshine Week Court Case Update Training. On March 18th, Attorney Anthony J. Skirbo and Attorney Lelma attended the Sunshine Week Court Case Update Training session facilitated by Ryan Mulvey, Policy Counsel at Americans for Prosperity Foundation, and Michael Hess, Assistant Legal Counsel for the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission's Freedom of Information Act Division. The training session covered how the courts have ruled in recent FOIA case law, and the facilitators offered their perspective on the impact of the rulings on FOIA professionals and the public. Open Meetings Act training. On March 20th, Chief Counsel Neal presented Navigating the Open Meetings Act to DC public body members and their staff. The training explored the application of the OMA to public bodies and addressed how to navigate specific frequently questioned areas of the Open Meetings Act by public bodies. OOG staff and I attended the training virtually. American Society for Access Professionals, Advanced Technology, Artificial Intelligence, and the Future of the Freedom of Information Act panel discussion. On March 20th, Attorney Lelma attended this training, and then it was facilitated and moderated by Ryan Mulvey and the following panelists: Jason Brown, University of Maryland; Alex Howard, Civic Tests; Irvin McCulloch, Consultant, Government Accountability Project; Sean O'Neill, U.S. Department of Justice, Office of Information Policy, and Nick Wittenberg, Our Media, LLC. The panelists discussed the impact of advanced technology, especially artificial intelligence, on the future of FOIA, both in terms of potential benefits and inevitable challenges. Parliamentary procedure, chair a meeting with confidence training. On March 27th, OOG hosted parliamentary procedure chair meeting with confidence training presented by Susan Leahy, founder of Robert's Rules Made Simple, to DC public body chairpersons, public body members, and their support staff. This interactive training covered the fundamentals of serving as a meeting chairperson and provided instructions on how to become a more confident and skilled meeting chairperson, equipped to use powerful tools and techniques for handling difficult meeting participants. I introduced Ms. Leahy, and OOG staff and I attended the training virtually. After this training, Ms. Leahy also provided basic parliamentary procedure training through a webinar hosted by the Office of Advisory Neighborhood Commissioners, and it was directed to new and seasoned ANC commissioners. OOG sponsored this training as a courtesy to the Office of ANCs to improve ANC commissioners' meetings. News media interview regarding the open meetings clarification emergency declaration resolution of 2025 and its companion bills. On March 31st, at the request of the news media personnel of NBC4 and the Washington Post, I attended telephone and on-camera interviews concerning the open meetings clarification and emergency declaration resolution of 2025 and the related bills, which I will discuss later in my report. My response to a Washington Post reporter's questions concerning the bills was printed in part on March 31st and April 1st in two news articles titled DC Council to Vote on Measures to Close Some Meetings to the Public and Transparency Law Slashed by DC Council as Lawmakers Want More Privacy. Copies of those articles are in Dropbox. The litigation and legislative update is as follows. First, I'll provide an update on litigation. The first case is Phillips versus the District of Columbia, case number 122 CV 00277 in front of Judge Boasberg and DC District Court. I previously reported on this case in which Amy Phillips alleged under 42 USC section 1983 that MPD maintains a watch list targeting certain DC FOIA requesters. Ms. Phillips' lawsuit is based on information provided by Vendette Parker, MPD's former FOIA officer. The 2022 lawsuit was accompanied by a 12-page statement signed by Ms. Parker. In her statement, she said that she was advised of an unofficial, unwritten policy that required the FOIA officer to notify former MPD Chief Newsom of any FOIA requests originating from the media, certain identified individuals, or requests for certain records. The district denied these allegations. The court referred the case to a magistrate judge for mediation, which is ongoing. In a February 28th joint status report, the parties indicated that they are in the process of finalizing a settlement agreement. On March 7th, per the party stipulation, the court ordered the case to be dismissed with prejudice, each party to bear its own cost. A copy of the stipulation has been added to Dropbox. The next case is Gooch versus the District of Columbia Metropolitan Police Department, case number 2023-CAB 002404 in DC Superior Court. I have previously reported on this case in which a requester plaintiff sued the district for records related to his conviction. The plaintiff had received partly redacted records. The parties previously agreed to work on redactions in the Vaughn Index, providing updates at each status hearing. A status hearing was held on March 28th, at which it was determined that the plaintiff is to file a motion regarding redactions on May 12th. Any opposition is to be filed by June 11th and replies by July 11th. A remote motion hearing is scheduled for September 2nd, and OOG will continue to monitor. The next case is DC Open Government Coalition versus the District of Columbia, case number 2023 CAB 007251 in DC Superior Court. I have also previously reported on this case, which is a lawsuit against the district seeking an accounting of the backlog of public records requests submitted through the FOIA Express Public Access link. The plaintiff asked the court to set a briefing schedule for motions of summary judgment. The government opposed this on the basis that no issues have been raised since the last time the parties briefed on the issue. On September 18, 2024, the court ordered the plaintiff to provide a supplemental brief explaining why new motions for summary judgment are necessary. The plaintiff filed a supplemental brief as well as a motion for leave to amend its complaint on October 2nd. The district responded with an opposition to plaintiff motions for leave to amend the complaint on October 23rd, 2024. On January 23rd of this year, the court granted the plaintiff motion to amend and denied cross motions for summary judgment as moot. The plaintiff filed their amended complaint on January 24th. A remote status hearing was held on March 28th. The parties requested a continuance to discuss settlement. The matter is now set for another remote status hearing on May 16th, and our staff will continue to monitor. Next is a report on legislation. Legislative action regarding the Open Meetings Act. On March 28th, the Council Chairman Mendelson introduced PR 26-0156, the Open Meetings Clarification Emergency Declaration Resolution of 2025, and the companion bills B 26-0110. 0199, the Open Meetings Clarification Emergency Amendment Act of 2025, and 26-0200, the Open Meetings Act Clarification Temporary Amendment Act of 2025. On April 1st, the DC Council passed by a vote of 10-2 both of these bills that made sweeping amendments to the Open Meetings Act. The DC Council provided that through their PR 26-156, Open Meetings Clarification Emergency Declaration Resolution of 2025, that these amendments were necessary for the Council to confront unprecedented threats to home rule. The resolution stated that, quote, this emergency legislation is particularly necessary in the current political climate to allow the council to be briefed as a body in a timely manner and to develop appropriate responses to rapidly unfolding issues. The resolution and declaration of an emergency passed unanimously. Bills made substantial changes to how the Open Meetings Act applies to the DC Council, significantly limiting the applicability of the OMA to only legislative meetings and committee markups. The bills also provide that the DC Council may adopt its own rules concerning gatherings of the DC Council. The bills also exclude the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council's meetings from the Open Meetings Act. The Emergency Act shall take effect following approval of the mayor or an event of the mayor, a veto by the mayor, action by the council to override the veto, and shall remain in effect for no longer than 90 days as provided for Emergency Acts of the Council of the District of Columbia in Section 412A of the District of Columbia Home Rule Act. As with all temporary acts, following approval or override, the temporary amendment shall expire 225 days after taking effect. The chairman has also tentatively scheduled a public hearing for April 22nd, presumably in anticipation of permanent legislation amending the OMA. Legislative action regarding DC FOIA. On March 31st, 2025, Councilmember Zachary Parker introduced B-260217, the Transparency is Accountability Amendment Act of 2025. Councilmember Parker's legislation is intended to, quote, make targeted changes to DC FOIA to enhance the ability of the public citizen to obtain critical information about agency operations and to incentivize efficient and responsible government conduct through greater transparency. Per the sponsor, the legislation will do the following. 1, clarify that 911 call records cannot be withheld under the personal privacy exemption where the name and number of the caller is redacted, while also allowing a caller to provide written consent for this information to be disclosed. 2, ensure that often used exemption for interagency and intra-agency memoranda cannot be used to withhold information regarding government misconduct, including discrimination, violation of criminal law, and sexual harassment. Require agencies to identify a specific foreseeable harm when asserting an exemption to disclosure and to consider discretionary releases of information when the likelihood of significant harm occurring is low and the public interest in the information is high. And 4, require the disclosure of information withheld under deliberative process if the public's interest in disclosure outweighs the district's interest in secrecy. The chairman referred this legislation to the Committee of the Whole. No action has been taken at this time. A copy of the bill has been added to Dropbox. I will conclude my report with administrative matters. Post-performance oversight hearing response to council members' request. On March 21st, I submitted OOG's response to the following post-performance hearing before the Committee of the Judiciary and Public Safety request from Councilmember Brooke Pinto, dated March 3rd. Virtual meeting requirements. Please provide Bega's analysis and specific recommendations regarding making permanent the temporary provisions under DC Official Code Section 2-575A4, allowing remote meeting access to public body meetings, including any identified challenges or necessary statutory changes. OOG's response included a draft bill, the Virtual Open Meetings Authority Act of 2025, to amend the Open Meetings Act of 2010 to provide that when the District of Columbia public bodies are conducting meetings via electronic means, certain electronic meetings shall be deemed open even if there are technical issues that prevent real-time access to the meeting. I also submitted a draft bill, the Virtual Open Meetings Authority Act of 2025, to amend the Open Meetings Act of 2010 to provide that District of Columbia public bodies may conduct meetings via teleconference, internet platform, or other electronic means, and provide the public with the ability to attend the meetings on that platform, and to provide that a meeting shall be deemed open even if an unforeseen technical issue arises, and to provide that all public bodies may conduct meetings electronically if the mayor of the District of Columbia declares an emergency respecting the health, safety, or welfare of residents of the District of Columbia. A copy of this post-performance oversight hearing request, the draft bills and legislative proposal, and a summary of specific states' electronic meeting laws are in Dropbox. This concludes the Office of Open Government's April 3rd report. I'm happy to answer any questions the board may have.
Thank you, Director Allen. Are there any questions? No questions. Thank you.
Madam
Go
Chair, I just want to thank Director Allen for fielding a lot of challenging questions in the media recently. I think you represented our agency very well. Certainly, I speak for myself, we all respect the legislative branch's prerogative to look at its own statutes and adjust them. That's their prerogative. But I'm just curious, were you asked by anybody on council to provide any technical assistance before this change, the Open Government Act, along the lines of what's allowed in the way of communicating with the mayor, for example, if you're a council member? Or in other words, I'm having trouble understanding the public policy problem that's trying to be solved with this new legislation changing the Open Government Act.
I was not consulted prior to them releasing these bills. They did, Councilmember Pinto did ask us the question, for the post-hearing question, but it was restricted to electronic meetings and didn't go to the issues that these new bills are seeking to remedy. So we were not consulted, but we are always happy to provide the council with research and any information that they need to make good decisions about district public policy related to meetings.
And my understanding is the council, as is the case with our agency and other public bodies in the district, they have a lot of the Open Government Act allows certain meetings to be held without the public present.
Correct.
Could you give us maybe a few examples of the types of meetings the council has always been under the Open Government Act as it stood before the last few days? The type of meetings they already were able to have outside of the public eye?
Well, I'll address specifically meetings with the mayor. They are able to meet with the mayor now under the current Open Meetings Act, the permanent, on an emergency basis if necessary. They should provide notice to the public at this time that they are providing notice to everyone participating in the meeting. But that's a large example of something that they were currently able to do. If there are negotiations that are taking place that need to be kept confidential, as you all know, the Open Meetings Act also provides that a public body may close a meeting for that purpose. One of the things that was particularly concerning to me about this new legislation is notice, that by having these exclusions, the public won't receive notice. Under both of those examples that I gave, the public does receive some notice that the meeting is occurring, so the meeting is not completely secret. Under this new scheme, that's been eliminated on a temporary and emergency basis.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions for Director Allen? Okay. The next on our agenda is a report from the Office of Government Ethics. We'll hear from Director Ashley Cook.
Good morning, Chairperson Hutcheson and members of the board. I'm Ashley Cooks, the Director of the Office of Government Ethics, and I'm pleased to present this report on the activities of the Office of Government Ethics, OGE. First is an update on the status of OGE operations. The information reported today regarding OGE's cases will not reflect any status changes that may occur because of actions taken by the board during today's meeting. For open investigations by status, we have 46 matters that are open, 1 matter that is open pending show cause, for a grand total of 47 matters. We have, for open undocketed matters, we have a grand total of 7. Pending state investigations by status, we have 37 matters that are closed pending collection, 2 matters stayed pending DC Superior Court case, 4 matters stayed for OIG investigation, 3 matters stayed for U.S. District Court case, for a grand total of 46. For regulatory matters by status, we have 36 matters that are closed pending collection, 70 matters that are open, for a grand total of 106. Again, we currently have 47 open investigations and 9 matters that are stayed. The number of open preliminary and formal investigations includes 8 new matters. The investigative team resolved 14 investigations since the board last met. This total does not reflect the number of complaints that were dismissed for a lack of jurisdiction. Within the next few weeks, the quarterly complaint report for quarter 2 of fiscal year 2025 will be published to the Bega website, as well as a press release and heat map, which outlines the number and types of cases that were closed in the quarter. Next is an update on training and outreach. First, professional development trainings attended by staff. Supervisory Investigator Ron Cook attended Building High Performing Teams by the DC Department of Human Resources, DCHR. Chief of Staff Christina Mitchell and Supervisory Attorney Advisor Asia Stewart Mitchell both attended Progressive Discipline through DCHR. General Counsel Rashi Raj attended Ethics for Government Lawyers 2025, Advancing Racial Equity, and From Overwhelmed to On Track, How to Fix Follow Through and Productivity. Administrative Officer Naquita Titus attended Family Medical Leave Act training. For trainings conducted by staff, since the last board meeting, OGE conducted 8 training sessions. That includes 2 new employee orientation ethics segments, 1 financial disclosure statement filer training, the March monthly ethics counselor training, a custom ethics training for the DC Department of General Services, ethics training for the DC Office of Healthcare Ombudsman, the quarterly lobbyist registration and reporting e-file training, and the March brown bag session. On Monday, March 31st, Supervisory Attorney Advisor Stuart Mitchell and General Counsel Raj presented the March Ethics Counselor Brown Bag Session, a panel discussion titled Things Successful Ethics Counselors Do. Raj and Stuart Mitchell moderated 4 of the district's star ethics counselors, including Catherine Allman from the Department of Energy and Environment, Brett Bennett from the DC Health, Bill Bonilla from the Office of Contracting and Procurement, and April Randall from the Department of Licensing and Consumer Protection. 18 ethics counselors attended the session. A copy of the presentation was placed in Dropbox. During the month of March, 153 employees completed ethics training using PeopleSoft, and 56 employees were added to the learning management system. The training team has been meeting with LRN to discuss creating new courses and updating existing courses to make them more accessible to users. Last month, OGE launched BGA 601, Financial Interests and Disclosures, which is an updated version of the previous financial disclosure training course. OGE is currently working to create BGA 929, Outside Employment, which will address issues that employees should avoid when maintaining employment outside of the government. Additionally, OGE launched a training campaign which invited 314 advisory neighborhood commissioners to complete BGA 920 Advisory Neighborhood Commissions ethics training. For outreach, on March 20th through the 21st, I participated in the Council of Europe's Group of States Against Corruption, GRECO 6th Evaluation Conference in Strasbourg, France. GRECO was established in 1999 by the Council of Europe to monitor states' compliance with the organization's anti-corruption standards. GRECO helps to identify deficiencies in national anti-corruption policy, prompt the necessary legislative, institutional, and practical reforms, and provide a platform for the sharing of best practices and the prevention and detection of corruption. This evaluation round focused on preventing corruption and promoting integrity at the subnational level. I participated in a plenary session titled Preventing Corruption, Building an Ethical Infrastructure, Transparency, and Control Mechanisms. I provided information on the district's financial disclosure statement program, including the designation of public officials, notice, distinctions between public and confidential filers, the questions on the financial disclosure form, and the audit process. I also provided information on the district's outside employment restrictions. The information was well received, and I received several follow-up questions. A copy of the presentation was placed in Dropbox. On March 14th through the 15th, General Counsel Raj attended a meeting of the Program Committee for the Council on Governmental Ethics Laws, COGL, in Atlanta, Georgia. GC Raj, on behalf of the agency, is a member of the committee and coordinates and plans every session for the annual conference in December. Next is an update on advisory opinions and advice. First is informal advice. ODE's legal staff provided advice for approximately 35 ethics inquiries, which is one less than the 36 reported at the March board meeting. This number does not include responses we have provided to questions regarding the lobbyist and FDS e-filing systems. For formal advisory opinions, ODE has 2 advisory opinions in the works on widely attended gatherings and an edited advisory neighborhood commissioner sign-on letter opinion. Next is an update on legislation and reporting, legislation and rulemaking. The first one is Budget Support Act proposal. OGE has completed a draft Budget Support Act proposal, which will amend the lobbyist section of the Ethics Act by repealing Section 1-1162.2A4, which excludes 501c4 organizations from registering as lobbying entities, and adding language that requires those entities to register in the same manner as 501c3 organizations. The proposal was sent to the Office of the City Administrator for review and support. A copy will be sent to the Council pending our budget oversight hearing, which is scheduled for April 25th, 2025. Next is an update on lobbying registration and reporting amendment. We're currently conducting a rulemaking. OGE is in the process of amending the lobbyist section of Bega's regulations to make technical changes and clarify reporting requirements. Specifically, the amendment changes the registration fee and late filing fine to the amounts in the new fee schedule that were implemented at the beginning of this fiscal year. The amendment would also include language that notifies registrants that the best course of action when intending not to engage in lobbying is to file a termination report. Next is an update on OGE administrative matters. First is an update on vacancies. OGE's human resources specialist and attorney advisor vacancies have been filled, and both new employees are expected to start later this month. The vacancy announcement for the legal fellow position has closed, and OGE has reviewed resumes and will conduct interviews later this afternoon. OGE will post its program support assistant vacancies soon. For performance oversight hearing, on February 5th, Chairperson Hutcheson, Director Allen, and I testified in our agency's budget oversight hearing before the Committee on the Judiciary and Public Safety. The committee sent post-hearing questions and requested answers by March 24th. OOG and OGE provided responses on March 21st. For an update on financial disclosure statement, FDS, pursuant to DC Official Code Sections 1-1162.24 and 1-1162.25, public officials and certain government employees must file a financial disclosure statement as a means of transparency and to prevent engaging in conduct that violates the Financial Conflict of Interest statute. Bega is responsible for ensuring that employees and public officials who meet the statutory requirement file their annual financial disclosure statement. We are in the initial stages of the 2025 financial disclosure statement season. As I previously mentioned in the past, at the past meeting, the team provided training for ethics counselors. Actually, there were 3 ethics counselors FDS trainings and 2 trainings for new filers. OGE held the final new filer training on March 14th. The deadline for agencies to have identified and provided their list of filers to OGE was March 3rd. OGE received most of the list, and staff uploaded 9,734 filers to the e-filing system. On April 1st, Program Coordinator Kosick coordinated with our mailing vendor And he will be mailing notices to those filers on April 15th,
What's the filing deadline again? May 15th?
May 15th. For lobbyist registration and reporting, LRR, pursuant to DC Official Code Section 1-116.27A, a person who receives compensation or expends funds in an amount of $250 or more in any 3 consecutive calendar month period for lobbying shall register with the Director of Government Ethics and pay the required registration fee. According to DC Official Code Section 1-1162.30, each registrant shall file a quarterly report concerning the registrant's lobbying activity during the previous quarter. On March 28, Program Coordinator Kosick sent a notice to active lobbyists to file their 2025 first quarter activity reports. The report period is open, is now open, and the 2025 first quarter activity reports are due on April 15th. Fine letters were sent to late filers, and 2 letters resulted in fine waivers, which we will discuss in the executive session. As mentioned before, Attorney Advisor Echols and Program Coordinator Kosick held a lobbyist training on Wednesday, March 19th. And the last update is public investigations. There's 2 matters to discuss there. That's 24-0016F and 25-0002F, Henry Trayon White. These are formal investigations based on, number 1, the criminal indictment in which respondent, council member for Ward 8, allegedly agreed to receive $156,000 in bribe and accepted $35,000 in cash from a business owner in exchange for assisting with renewing the company's violence interruption contracts with the district government. And 2, allegations that the respondent violated the code of conduct by failing to file a full and complete financial disclosure statement pursuant to DC Official Code Section 1-1162.24. Investigation 24-0016F is stayed pending the outcome of the criminal court case, which is scheduled for trial on January 12, 2026. Thank you. This concludes my report. I welcome any questions you may have.
Thank you, Director Cooks. Are there any questions for Director Cooks? Questions? Okay. Next on the agenda is opportunity for members of the public in attendance at this meeting to make a comment at this time. Are there any comments from members of the public? Okay, I'm recognizing DB, I think that's Ms. Brazil. Yes, you're muted, Ms. Brazil. Right. Yes. Okay. Ms. Brazil, if you're unable to get yourself off mute, we're going to go forward and then we'll come back to you. The next item on the agenda is the executive or closed session. This is a session to discuss ongoing confidential investigations pursuant to DC Official Code Section 2-575B14, to consult an attorney to obtain legal advice and to preserve the attorney-client privilege between an attorney and a public body pursuant to DC Official Code Section 2-57B4A, to direct personnel matters, to discuss personnel matters, including the appointment, employment, assignment, promotion, performance evaluation, compensation, discipline, demotion, removal, or resignation of government appointees, employees, or officials pursuant to DC Official Code, excuse me, Section 2-575B10, to deliberate on a decision in which the Ethics Board will exercise quasi-judicial functions pursuant to DC Official Code Section 2-57B13, and to discuss contract negotiation strategies pursuant to DC Official Code Section 2-575B2. May I have a motion to enter executive session?
So moved.
Your second? It's been moved and seconded that the board will enter into executive session. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Okay. The motion passes unanimously. Board members, please move over to the boardroom for the executive session. We will return to this meeting after the conclusion of the executive session to report out on any matters decided, finish any other business, and adjourn the meeting. The time is now 10:41. And we are back on the record. Ms. Brazil, are you available for your comment now? See, your hand is still up and you're still muted.
Madam Chair, my understanding is the unmuting has to be done by the party that wants to comment, right? Where it's not the
Right.
board staff that is failing to unmute. It's just.
Thank you. No joint play. Okay. Ms. Brazil? I'm not even sure she can even hear me. But hear me, right? Read those.
Yeah.
Those questions that are there. There's some comments in the chat we're looking to address if we can. Okay. You want to read the comments?
We have comments from Brazil. And her comments are Zoom meeting is not working. She tried to restart. She's tried to mute herself. And so the substance of her comment, I would like to ask the Bega board and staff, what are you going to do about the proposed revisions to the Open Meetings Act the council adopted on Tuesday as temporary legislation? And what efforts are the board and staff going to make prior to April 22nd hearing regarding the permanent legislation the council will be considering? Do you plan to meet with the council, provide a written analysis of the impact and consequences of the legislation? Will the Bega staff make itself available to civic groups and organizations to discuss, analyze, and propose revisions to the legislation? If the Bega staff can travel to Europe for a conference, which was just reported this morning, can the Bega staff and/or board travel downtown to the Wilson Building to discuss this important legislation with the mayor and the council? That's the end of the comment.
To address Ms. Brazil's comment, yes, to all of her statements. We do plan to provide advice to the council. We are open to receive comments from civic organizations and others regarding the bills and travel to the Wilson Building if necessary.
Okay. Anything else? Okay. Since there is nothing else, the time is now 11:34 a.m. and this concludes the meeting of the DC Board of Ethics and Government Accountability. Our next meeting will be held here at 1030 15th Street Northwest, Suite 700 West, and virtually on May 1st, 2025 at 10 a.m. We're adjourned. Thank you.